In Michael Graves, having worked with him uh, in the early 80s, or actually in the late 80s, um, one of the things that I took away from my work experience with him was the idea of using precedents. I didn't even, as an undergrad, um, I didn't even know really what a precedent was,
Really?
and that using other buildings to help inform your ideas about the building that you're designing, it was not something that was taught in the undergraduate curriculum. Uh, it was it was more of a gut feel, um, and so I like to say that my educational experience was West Coast for undergrad and East Coast for grad school. Um, you
Yeah,
know,
'cause it seems without that informs decision, so they didn't really teach you how to design in undergrad. That seems.
well, no, they taught you how to design in a different way. It was taught through experientially. Designing a building that you could experience, or designing a building that had, certain emotional characteristics to it, versus based on, well, this is a reference to the Roman baths, or this is a reference to, um, you know, uh, uh, something in the Beaux Arts tradition, or this is a reference to something
Well,
else.
yeah, I do think that those sorts of almost arbitrary preferences, it depends on how you do it, but the precedents I find way more useful are the ones around actual productivity, and that more comes from being informed from the plan and or section than whatever the form actually is of it. Because I don't, especially with postmodernism, I have like a love hate thing because some of the buildings are just so funky. I'm just like, I just can't help but laugh or smile at it. And
But
in
you
fact,
you have to keep it in the context of what it was doing. So,
no, and
and
that's my
what I
point.
what I've told my students is that modernism's failure was not the brilliance of Mies or Korb or Gropius or any one of the other really great modern architects, early modern architects. It was the failure in the supplanters and secondhanders and copiers of that work, who were not as ingenious as those originators. And so they didn't understand the work, that they truly didn't understand Mies. They truly didn't understand Korb. They were just copying forms, and in that they created these buildings that had no human scale, no sensibility, no um, uh, intuitive wayfinding, no ability to, even know where the entrance of the building was. And they created these banal buildings in trying to copy something that was difficult to replicate. So you take the Seagram's building as an example. An amazing structure for its time. And if you walk along Park Avenue, it's the only building that's set back from the street edge. And you're walking along, and all of a sudden there's relief in the city, which is desperately needed in a place like New York. And the building sets back and creates a park-like setting. There's two fountains that are out there that are totally occupied all the time. And it's this shining beacon of beautiful simplicity. And even SOM, when they copied it, they didn't quite do it the same kind of justice that Mies did. It didn't have the same kind of finesse and elegance to it that the Seagram's building has. And so if SOM couldn't get it right, I mean, Joe Schmo, architect over here, certainly didn't get it right, and that mistake was repeated over and over and over again. So postmodernism was a reaction to that. It was, we need to try to bring back some of the intrigue and elegance and um, and qualities that draw people into buildings, and visual references to past building shapes and forms that people can recognize and understand and operate in. And I told them that um, when Colin Rowe wrote Colin Rowe wrote the introduction to Michael Gray's first monograph, and it's called A Case for Figurative Architecture. And he lays out in a beautiful way the terms of postmodern architecture. And every architectural student should read that essay and understand it, certainly in its context. Now, I'm not certainly advocating that we go back to that, but it, for somebody who was committed to doing white architecture, which Graves was from the beginning, he was one of the New York Five. Um, he's the only one who really migrated away from that in a very distinct way, because he wanted to bring back into uh, the the human psyche this notion of figurative architecture and how profoundly it can influence your ability to perceive and understand buildings.